Okay, welcome to those that have joined us from home as well as here in council chambers. Got a very busy night of Poquoson politics, but we want to start with some of the things. We're going to talk about storm in the regular session this evening. We're going to talk about doing some of the regular city business, but I don't want to overlook this, and this is the comprehensive plan or our path ahead for the future for 2018 through 2038. Is the comprehensive plan. We've asked Bonnie and Bill from the Planning Commission to join us this evening. It is their Planning Commission that is so far has approved this and gone through it with the help of Wally Horton and Dan O'Connell from the city staff. And so we're looking for a brief. No action is going to be taken on this either at this work session or at the follow-on meeting, but we will decide a path ahead here for consideration of that. So without further ado, Randy, I think you want either Wally or Dan to walk us through what the substantive changes are.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm going to be brief. I came in sort of at the tail end of this process, and I've seen enough of the process to know that the Planning Commission did a very good job in taking a look at the different aspects of the comprehensive plan, and Mr. O'Connell is the principal writer of the comprehensive plan. So as such, I'm going to turn it over to him. He's carried it this far, and I'll let him carry it the rest of the way.
Okay, thank you very much. Dan?
All right.
Sure your microphone's on, Dan.
Yep, it should be.
Okay.
All right, so I've been asked to give kind of a brief introduction and summary of this document, specifically carrying in mind things that would be coming out of it that would come to the attention of City Council and would require their approval or their legislation. So the document, this is a culmination of a process that did start back in 2016, including a rather large public feedback and surveying effort. The document, the process, of course, was supposed to be an update of the existing 2008 plan, specifically in mind to trying to reduce the amount of redundant or outdated or unnecessary information that's in the existing plan, trim it down to what is most important, and update all of the information and data that's in the plan, as well as to incorporate current public feedback. And so the document you have before you today, it's about 120 pages shorter and does hopefully consist of a lot clearer language and a lot more straightforward language. So the most important takeaways would be the goals, objectives, and strategies, which are at the end of every chapter. Sort of pulled out some of the most important ones, and they were on the work program, which was up on the screen. Pull that up for you. Oh, well, it's not on the screen anymore, but it is the second to last page in the copies of the comp plan which you were provided with. I should say that this comp plan, after it was recommended for approval back in May by the Planning Commission, it was made available on the city website. It's been available for download since, I believe, the beginning of June, and these copies were provided to you, of course, in the middle of the summer. So the work program, page 9-1, contains basically the takeaway, the most important of the goals, objectives, and strategies in the comp plan that would require both work on behalf of city staff to implement them, as well as either approval or kind of go ahead or some kind of legislative action from City Council in order to implement. So I can just run through some of them here. The most important ones would be the ones for Chapter 3, that would be the housing chapter. There are 7 strategies that were included in this chapter, which are a mix of strategies from previous comprehensive plans as well as new ones that were included based on feedback from city staff and citizen feedback. So beginning with strategy 1, which is the one that is in our current comp plan, which is the inclusion of attached single-family residential, i.e. duplexes, in new housing developments. So that's a strategy that where it is already in our comp plan, and that's been carried over. There's 3 new strategies. One is a moderate density residential zoning district. There's a strategy for allowing smaller homes on smaller lots, and there's a strategy for relaxing the rules on accessory apartments for things like multi-generational housing. And all these were included based upon staff feedback or citizen support. There's also a strategy for allowing new higher density residential, that is apartments and condominiums, albeit in a more planned fashion in appropriate areas in the city, specifically regarding things like planned unit developments, PUDs. There's also a home pride program. That was included in the 1999 comp plan, and we've put that back in. There's also a strategy for flood insurance and continuing with the FEMA flood insurance program, of course. So those are the main strategies. There is a caveat at the end of that section that all those would require significant study to determine whether or not they would be appropriate. But they were all included basically to give the widest range of options possible for City Council and for City staff. Moving on to the next chapters, in Chapter 4, there's a strategy for the EDA to offer performance-based incentives for attracting economic development, and I know they've expressed willingness to do such a thing, to offer those. For the environmental management chapter, there's the development of a shoreline management plan. This is a carryover from our current comp plan that's included there. This was based upon a time several years ago when more intensive waterfront development was being proposed in certain areas of the city. That really hasn't materialized within the past 10 years, but we've included that plan anyways in case such development does occur. We would want to have it proceed in a more planned fashion. In the community services chapter, there's two big things. One is the study for a new public safety building, which would incorporate police and fire administration to try and locate that somewhere within the city, as well as study for the replacement of the city municipal building, which is one of the oldest public buildings in the city. For infrastructure, there is the creation of an infrastructure master plan, which would include basically all transportation infrastructure in the city, so new road improvements, road widenings, as well as sidewalks, bike paths, all those pedestrian improvements. That's also a carryover from the previous comp plan. That would be mostly an engineering and community development project, but if we were ever to want a comprehensive transportation plan, that's being included in the comp plan as well. Finally, for the land use chapter, we've got an item for streetscape refurbishment for With Creek Road and Victory Boulevard. I believe there was a With Creek Road streetscape improvement plan that was commissioned a number of years ago. And so this item recommends either revisit and readopt the strategies that were included in that plan or try and put forward new ones. There's also a number of items for revising the ordinances, the land use ordinances in the current city ordinances. So the zoning ordinance, the site plan ordinance, the subdivision ordinance, the sign ordinance, all these were kind of looked at in city staff, and a lot of improvements could be made in terms of the language of those, kind of updating them and bringing them into line, so we've included them there. Finally, there's an item for publishing an annual zoning map. This is something that was a project for our previous department a number of years ago that was kind of fell by the wayside. We'd like to bring that up and start doing it again, trying to get an accurate annual zoning map published by the city. So that's a summary of the major strategies that are included in the work program and in the comp plan. I'll be happy to take any questions that you have.
All right, council. Buddy, you wanna lead us off?
Dan, and just one thing on page 533, in table 5.5.
Yes.
I think Poquoson Marina should be replaced by White House Cove Marina, and they no longer have a private boat ramp, but we do have the Renz Road boat ramp there that's public, so I think that correction should be made.
I'll definitely make a note of that.
533. Okay, other questions? All right, so Bonnie, as chairman and Bill as vice chairman, y'all want to let us know at all, and no is okay. But would you like to walk through what y'all see as the substantive changes, so council can have your opinion?
Well, I think first I want to say that probably this is the easiest update that I've ever had to take part in. And I'm going to give a lot of the credit, and I think Bill will too, to Dannon, because Dannon helped to streamline this a great deal. Our goal was to get rid of a lot of stuff in there that was repetitive and that no longer applied, and as he said, we cut it 120 pages, and I don't think you're going to miss any of those pages. I may be wrong, but I don't think you will. I think it'll be an easier document for anybody who picks it up to look at it, and that was one of our biggest goals. And I will also, I'd like to give credit, as I have previously, to Bill. Bill he operated a very smooth operation in being the liaison. He and Lee Phoenixon also, she helped, but as the two planning commission members for the community group that met many hours and provided a great deal of input to us, which was certainly helped us in updating the document. But I hope you will see the finished product here as we finished it. But of course, you all certainly have the option to go through it and change anything, but we feel like we've come up with as Bill said just a few minutes ago, we didn't come up with a perfect document. You won't come up with a perfect document, but we've come up with something that we feel like will be useful to all of us and to the people that come here, to the community. They can, if they choose to peruse it, we hope it will help them. Bill?
I don't know what else I could add to what you said. I would just point out, I think it's pretty evident, everybody knows about it, I point out that there was an awful lot of community input to what we provided. This was not something, as was directed by council, this was not something that the Planning Commission sat down and conjured up on themselves. Quite frankly, it was exactly the opposite. So what you have is at least something that has a lot of input from members of the community.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay, well said. Anything else?
I think just the fact that they reduced it by the number of pages that they reduced it by is a considerable improvement.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you. I mean, one of the things that I remember one of the very first meetings, I said, get rid of the redundancy. And it appears that you've done a lot of hard work, Dan, and I want to give you a lot of the credit for doing that. The redundancy in here where it would say one thing in one chapter and something else in another chapter. And it really wasn't a very good document because you could find in there, in the old one, you could pretty much say it said anything. So it really wasn't a vision. It was just a lot of writing, and you could find that it retracted itself at different locations. So I've taken initial. I didn't get to page 533, buddy, but you know, I haven't gotten there yet. But I've been reading the executive summary of it, and it sounds well done. It sounds very reasonable for the future of Poquoson. And surprisingly, you know, the changes were what I would say not in terms of pages, as the Vice Mayor said, it's quite a reduction. In terms of content, it seems to think that kind of borrow on the fact that we had basically a good plan and that it's been improved. Mm-hmm. That's the way I look at it. So, all right. So, Council, any other thoughts? If not, I'm going to make a proposal here that the next meeting this month, unless there's objection or somebody wants more time to review it before, I'd say that we move to public hearing at the next council meeting. I'm not going to even consider that we approve it at that meeting because we'll certainly want to listen and give everybody a little bit more time based on that to read it, and then look for chance to approve it in October. Does that sound like a fair timeline to everyone? Good. Okay. That was the shortest comprehensive plan work session I've ever.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Actually, it was.
Thank you. You did a great job.
Mr. Mayor, I think that it's a product of Dannon's work and the planning committee. It's the work of everyone involved that led to that point.
Yep.
Because I recall when I first got here, approximately 9 months ago, or 9 years ago, sorry, we had the last update, and it was sort of stuck. And through the inclusive process and the work of the Planning Commission, they not only didn't get stuck, but I think they've given us a streamlined, much more usable document. So again, kudos to all involved. If you went through it 9 years ago, you really have a sense of how this is different.
All right, we'll be back at 7 o'clock for the rest of the meeting. And council, I'd like to have a sidebar over here and make sure y'all know what's going on from the governor's office. All right? All right, thanks.
Yes.
We might as well just rush that right here.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick.